Hey, good evening, everybody. We've got a fun show tonight. We are on a timetable too, so we've got about 2 hours that we can talk with my guest tonight, Kelvin Mao. And uh, I don't know why I didn't think of talking to Kelvin or offering the time to kind of get together and chat with him for a while. But he's been we did some PR for him when he was doing the documentary with Dave Stevens. But we definitely should have put him on a lot earlier than this. But so now is as good a time as any. So let me bring the man into the studio. Hey, Kelvin, how you doing?
Hey, Bill, great to be here. Great. Thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. It's funny. As often as I've seen you at shows, I don't think we've probably said more than 50 words to one another when we've seen each other. But so I feel like this is long overdue. I mean, I see you, when I go out to San Diego, you're always you're usually around, and I always get to see all your great Facebook posts where you're usually you've got a good drink in your hand and a cigar usually. So I know you have a good time when you go to those.
Doing my best. Now, I gotta say, I appreciate you always promoting us, not just the documentary, but with the Stevens Estate before when we were coming out with all the reprinted stuff. You guys always did a great job, and I really appreciate that. Always came through and helped us out, not just with promotion, but looking for art when we were looking for scans before for the arts edition. Hi, Scott. I see Scott in there. Now all my friends get to laugh at me for being on here a lot, but no, I really appreciate that. That stuff really helped us out a lot.
No, well, it's my pleasure. I think there's not enough of that sort of thing going on. I mean, obviously Scott does a great job with artist editions. I mean, those help preserve the art for our hobby. But there really isn't enough people out there doing documentaries, books, that kind of chronicle an artist's journey through the hobby that we love. And I've seen the last 3 years, that's something that I try to get creators on here and collectors who've got stories, because there just aren't enough people doing it. So I was really, I thought it was fantastic when you were putting together the Dave Stevens documentary. I mean, I can only imagine, and we're going to talk about that. I mean, how the struggles that you had to go through putting it together. But I'm sure at the end of the day, it was a labor of love for you to do that. So it's worth the work.
Well, it was definitely a big team effort, and I have to shout out to the other guys, Robert Wyndham, who's also a collector, who we met through our love of Dave Stevens, his original art, and Rob Chatlin, who is an editor and also had done other documentaries, so had experience there, as well as Jennifer Balcom, Dave's sister, who represents the estate, and she's always been a big supporter, and we couldn't have done it without all of her access to all the materials and all that stuff. So I gotta say, everybody there, and our DP, our crew, our Chris Unger, our AP. We were a small team. I think like 5 or 6 people, but we tried real hard, and that's where we are now. It was tough in some ways because of the personal connection and stuff. You're trying to, if you do a bad job in some respects, if you're working on a project and it's all you, it's you're just the only person that gets disappointed. But if you are doing it, and other people are sort of involved, then there's a little more pressure. I mean, it didn't really change how we approached it. We approached it with the same sort of speed that I approach my collecting, which is sort of like 10, and that's it. Whether it's whiskey or comic art or movie props, it's sort of the same level of enthusiasm. So,
well, that's cool. So I guess what we should like when we talked in the green room, I think kind of talking a bit about how you got into original art collecting, was a good place for us to start, and how that kind of eventually led to your desire to put something like this, the time into a documentary for Dave Stevens. I mean, so how long have you? I mean, you've been here when I started collecting. I know you were already collecting before I got into the hobby 20 years ago.
Well, I collected comics as a kid, and it sort of goes back to that. I grew up in Connecticut, and I collected comics as a kid. I had a best friend, whose parents bought him a lot of comics. So we would just sit around in his porch on a lazy weekend afternoon and just read comics, a giant wicker basket full of books. And his parents, I think, were smart. There were a lot of old reprints, and so I think they figured that old stuff was like suitable for kids. So I actually read a lot of Golden Age, Silver Age stuff, Infantino, Flash, Kane, Robinson, old Batman stuff. C.C. Beck, Captain Marvel. All that stuff, and like my friend's dad was a pilot, so also Tintin and like asterisk, that kind of a little bit of a eclectic thing. But I stopped collecting comics and then started again in the 80s. Like a lot of people, I think the first new comic book I picked back up was Uncanny X-Men 198. It was Storm, Forge, Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah.
And then I sort of started to go backwards. So I collect a lot of the things that like other people who were nostalgic for the 80s collect. Arthur Adams, Mike Mignola, Bill Sienkiewicz, and characters that were prevalent and became big with Wolverine and X-Men and all that stuff back then. So that's sort of where it came from. And I got to know some people in comics early on. My buddy Doug Minch, a longtime Marvel and DC writer. This is probably my oldest friend in professional in comics, but as far as art collecting goes, I moved out to LA in 1992, and that was my first San Diego Comic-Con. So, I don't think there have been little. I went to high school in Allentown, Pennsylvania, so there were little shows at like the Marriott downtown or whatever, a Hilton, ballroom. But I know I must have had some awareness of the artwork because they had art contests for like kids and stuff to do.
Sure.
I don't remember anybody with pages though. Obviously you knew how they were drawn. Then you go to Comic-Con and everything is there. Everything literally that you could want to see is there. And so I think it was the next year, 1993, was when I bought my first page. So I bought my first page. It was from Pete Koch, my good buddy Pete Koch.
Mm-hmm.
So Pete's out there someplace. Hi, Pete. It's your fault. I had some friends who lived out here already who had like small collections of stuff. My good friend Dan, who owns just a couple stores out here, or one store out here now. He had a small collection, so I got to see the pages, like in someone's collection, and it was I still have the page. It's a Captain America 187 or 188 page. I gave you a scan of it. It's like Captain America and Deathlock. Deathlock's one of my favorite characters.
Oh, right.
By Mike Zeck and John Beatty. So that was the first one. I think it was all of $30 or $35, and Pete had 3 of them, and they were all the same price. And I had to pick. I was like, which one am I going to buy? And instead of being like an idiot, I should have just bought them all. But because they were all the same, it was a tough one. So this is the one I chose, and it's got a little bit of everything on it, Cap and Deathlock, and it's just like a lot of other people in our hobby. It sort of snowballs. I collect a lot of other things, toys and just comics and movie props. And at a certain point, I think around 94, 95, I just decided to consolidate all my hobbies. So I sold a lot of other collections and just sort of concentrate on the artwork. And that's, prices have gotten high recently, but I would say for a good, 25 years. I mean, there were weeks, I remember, this is really funny. I was buying a house in 2003, and I knew I had to get all the art collecting in as fast as I could. So for that year, like UPS was stopping or FedEx was stopping by the house like multiple times a week. And then, of course, I had to start selling it all. So, oh, yes, I see Rich Dan. It's Mark Schultz country. Yes, Mark Schultz lives in Scranton. And so he'd been a guest at my local comic shop. I actually worked in a comic book shop in high school, which is part of where, they paid you under the table back then. So it was either X number of dollars cash or credit. And I found out very fast that, like, even if I took cash, it was going back into the store. So I switched to all credit, and I was it was Beachhead Comics in Allentown, right in downtown, run by a great guy, Jeff Rabkin, who unfortunately passed away. But I worked there for 3 or 4 years, and that's where I started getting back issues. And it was funny listening to Mandel talk about on his episode just about going backwards and just trying to figure out what I could buy. Every comic that was like under $3, $4, $5 until I got back to however far I got before college. But so that's sort of the origin the story. I mean, I also should point out that one of the first people I met in collecting was Tom Horvitz, who was a art collector, art dealer at the time, that lived close by to me. So because I'm a software developer, I helped Tom set up his website,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all done for credit. So a lot of my early collection came from Tom, who also introduced me to Dave Mandel. So I owe one to Tom if he's listening somewhere.
No, that's when I started doing dealer sites, same thing. I did it as credit, right? I mean, it was a great way to pick up some artwork and not have to spend any money out of pocket. So we had the same mindset there.
Yeah, and stretch yourself too. You could get a little bit if you banked a lot of work or whatever, a lot of credit. You might be able to go a little further than you would be normally, sticking your hand in your pocket for writing a check.
Without question.
So, yeah.
I mean, I did that quite a bit, but that's cool. I mean, and so you still have the page, obviously, your first page you got from Pete.
Yeah, no, it's this is all nostalgia. So there's nostalgia for the comics you read and the characters you love, and the artists you love. I mean, the early 80s is also when artists by name were really, to me, that's sort of like when a lot of artists sort of took over popularity. People were just following Arthur Adams on whatever book he was on, or Mignola, or Bill Sienkiewicz, or I mean, obviously there was Neil Adams and Steranko and those guys before, but to me, I remember Arthur with the long hair. So this was sort of the the age of the rock star artist began there. So
exactly.
But
go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, but the funny thing about it was when I first started, because I had such an eclectic sort of reading list growing up. Like I remember Tom or somebody asking me in the beginning, maybe it was Albert, like what was I looking for, what did I want, and like half the people I mentioned were like impossible. It's like Bob Kane Batman, Hergé Tintin, CC Beck Captain Marvel. What's that? What else? What other stupid things did I say in the beginning? I said a lot of things that were just like, Jack Cole Plastic Man, which I still haven't figured that one out. Just like things you don't know. You don't know what exists or what you can get or what price range. The Hergé thing was funny. I finally 5 years into collecting or so managed to get a little head sketch in a Tintin book. This like one of the sort of, I call the elder statesmen collectors in the hobby. I don't know if he would like me saying that. Rob Stolzer hooked me up with that one. That was quite a joy.
Yeah, his name, he's been around for a while. So but that's fair. He's an elder statesman, and it's good. I mean, anybody who's been in the hobby over 25 years definitely, I think, deserves that status. So technically, you have, I think, achieved that status too. I haven't. I'm getting there.
I'm getting older all the time, man. My birthday's at the end of the week. It's like, don't remind me about the age.
Well, I mean, again, that's I'm with you though, as far as the 80s artists and nostalgia that's there. But that is very interesting that those early books that you were reading were the CC Becks, the older books, and that's obviously fueled your desire to find pieces from some of those creators. And at least Albert set you straight on some of them being relatively impossible to get. But Albert always tells it like it is in terms of those things. But
I did okay. I mean, I did and eventually, I mean, I got most. 30 years. I did get most of those things, or at least got to see them. I mean, a lot of it was just like, it'd be great to see it. Just I don't know if you've been to the Smithsonian and seen like the Ditko, the Spider-Man story.
Not yet. One of these days, I'm gonna go.
Just, put the white gloves on, and get in there, and they bring it out, and it's so that's cool too. Oh, I see Marcus in here too. Hey, Marcus.
Oh yeah, Marcus will, he entertains us in the chat, so he'll be astute on anything and ribbing us at every opportunity. But yeah, no, that's that's one thing that I've always since it turned up, the Ditko Amazing Fantasy stuff, I've always wanted to go there, and I was trying to work it out when I went to Baltimore Con last year and couldn't swing it, but I have to make that happen. I mean, I think any collector that just loves looking at the originals has to see that.
Just have it coincide. I think a bunch of guys just went like you said with the Baltimore show. You plan it with a show, make an appointment, go in there. I mean, if you bring a flash drive, they'll give you scans. Because they're allowed to do that because they're the copyright repository of the U.S.
Well, I'm not going to Baltimore this year, so it's not going to be this year either. But if if any opportunity presents itself where I'm going up that way, I am going to make sure I get to see it. Because I've missed out on too many other things. I lived in Northeast Ohio all my life, and I never went to the Frazetta Museum in PA. I drove past it numerous times because I'd go to that IX show, which was in Allentown for a while, and it was in Scranton for a little bit. I mean, it kind of moved around a bit, but I was driving past it all the time and never took the opportunity to stop there. Now I'm in Florida, so I'm really going to have to go out of my way to get over there now.
It's there, but I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't been either, but a friend of mine went recently and sent back some pictures. I think because of all the sort of what should we say, the sort of complications with the estate and stuff like that. I don't know what you'll see and what you won't see, but
there's still stuff there. I mean, but it is divided, I think, right? And the other, I think a large portion of that came down to Florida, down in Sarasota, because there's a Frazetta gallery there, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
One of the daughters and the granddaughter is running that. So I went to see an art opening over there for Pratt's work about 4 or 5 months ago, and got to see one Frazetta while I was there, because they had moved everything out of the gallery and into a more secure location, and so I didn't get to see anything. But yeah, one day. I mean, at least that one's close now.
Right, right.
So when and we're going to be looking at a lot of artwork tonight too, in a short amount of time. But so how did your art collecting? I mean, when did you first meet Dave? I mean, and when I
met Dave Stevens in 1992 in the very first comic. I'm 100% sure of that, because I had at that time, in 1992. Even though it was a mind blowing for me, like I've been to some shows. I went to college in Southwest Virginia at Virginia Tech, and there were little shows that would come to campus around there. And then, like I said, when I was home in Allentown, but like this was like not, your mind is just blown. You know what I mean? How big everybody is there. Everybody you ever heard of is there. But at the time, I could park in the parking garage underneath the convention center. Like I would always park right by the stairs. So I had like a hatch pack, and I backed it up there, and I had long boxes like in the back of the car, like a little store. And I would and everything was labeled, posted. So I'd run downstairs and fill up a backpack or like a gym bag full of books I wanted signed, by whoever artist, and run over, line up. Then I'd run back, stuff them all back inside the boxes, all haphazard. Yeah, I would reload and then keep doing that. So I definitely met Dave in 92 at his booth. But, I didn't get to know him, personally until around, I want to say like 98, 97, 98, maybe, somewhere around there. Basically, I like a lot of pinup art in addition to, I think there's two parts to collecting. There's the aesthetic part, you're drawn to certain kinds of art, whether it's a horror or, like brushwork or, or like animated style, like Bruce Timm or Japanese manga, whatever. So, and I like pinup artwork, and Dave Stevens, was the epitome. But finding Dave Stevens art was like finding Steranko art. You know what I mean? Like if someone had two pieces in their collection, that was a great Dave Stevens collection. You know what I mean?
It was,
and so I just didn't know how to approach him to buy something. I wanted to buy a commission or something small. At that point, there were a lot of rumors with Dave. Dave was a very mysterious guy, very friendly in person, but like, kind of wasn't big on selling artwork, so he could be a little evasive. And I remember hearing like crazy stories. I remember hearing the rumor was that like if you wanted the commission from Dave Stevens, like a sketch, it was $1,000. This is, like I said, 1997 or whatever. It was $1,000, and he got to pick what he drew. Now, this wasn't the case, but I'm not sure where this came from. It was just, because Dave would only really draw something that he wanted to draw. So maybe that's sort of how it was. And so I remember another collector who bought a lot of stuff from him, who had a really big collection of his artwork, introduced us, and he said, "Hey, he's a great guy. I'll introduce you. It's fine." And then found out he lived really close to me, and I used to go to life drawing class on like Wednesday nights. That a friend of mine, an artist who worked at a company called BRC, like it's a company that makes like attractions, you know what I mean, for like amusement parks and stuff like that. And I think that's Tony Christopher, the big collector, that massive Silver Age Marvel collection. He had a company similar called Landmark, I think. Also one of the most amazing collections that I got to see one time. I was just lucky before he sold all stuff. Albert took me over there, and it was like, oh my God, you know what I mean? But anyway, so I would call Dave like after class or whatever, and you want to have a bite or meet or talk about art or whatever. It started very fan pro, like Dave was very sort of conservative about like, he was a kind of a private guy. He was definitely a private guy. And so it took a little while, but we would just meet up at like weird old shitty diners in Burbank or North Hollywood. Dave loved like the worst places you could go to eat at night, like because they had some history involved. So, this place, the Coral in Burbank, that might still be there. Some places that aren't there anymore. I think a lot of the places I used to go eat with Dave Stevens no longer exist. But that was basically how we got to know each other as friends. So I would commission the first thing that you showed me earlier, the inked Adam Hughes Fairchild Supergirl Superman sketch thing. That one of my sort of quirky things that I would do. I mean, a lot of people carry sketchbooks around at shows and get themes, theme sketchbooks done, and I did that too. But I did this thing where I would try and find interesting pencil or inker combinations that you wouldn't normally see like on a book, and then I would get a sketch by one of them, the penciler, and then I'd try and get somebody to ink it. And so Dave did this. I think it was the first commission he ever did for me. So he light boxed it, so I had both pieces. I think in the beginning, I think I did one of them on the piece. I think the rest of them I might have done blue line or light box after that. I tried not to disturb the pencils, but the first one was like, I think it was Adam Hughes, and it was like one of his inkers inking him, so that wasn't that unusual. It wasn't like I ruined the piece, although I kind of wish I still had that piece back. Well, it's tough, if you buy for a long time, unless you have unlimited resources, you're always going to end up selling something, or just by having discipline to, one of the great collectors who's no longer with us is Bruce Lowry. Bruce Lowry was a good friend, and we used to have the Lowry Gallery named after him, but he had this philosophy of always trying to, whoever you like, whatever you wanted to buy, you should try and buy the best possible single piece that you could afford by that guy, and then trade up. Instead of buying a bunch of little things, it was always like buy like one great piece by like John Byrne or whoever. And he was pretty disciplined like that. I guess not everybody, but like not all artists. He did have multiples, but I'm not sure where the hell I'm going with this. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's crazy. We don't talk about Bruce too often. I never got to meet him. So I've always heard stories secondhand from, about Bruce, but I've heard him, that same thing about, get a good example, get the best example you can get, and trade up. I mean, and
Yes.
I think that's a fair place to start. People complain about the prices in the hobby these days, but the thing is, if you want a John Buscema, you can find a John Buscema. It just won't be an Avengers page. It might have to be, a horror page or something. And then,
right.
You're not
for now,
right. So get one, get one right now, so you can say you have an example, and then work your way up. Right. I mean,
that was my point. My point is having to trade up. Trading up means you're going to have to, sell some pieces, or, you're probably going to have to make your collection work for you at a certain point when you have
exactly
a lot of stuff. I mean, you mentioned that I had like posted 500 pieces. I was like, oh my God, that's one of those things I've never actually done, was taking a complete count. So this is sobering numbers when you hear about that. You know what I mean? Like, I remember like I logged 500 hours playing Battlefield, and I thought that was a lot. 500 pieces of art seems somehow worse. But
500 pieces of art. Well, and that's funny because I was talking with somebody recently too, and they had mentioned that that they have 2 portfolios, and they've been collecting for a long time, and 2 portfolios was a good amount for them. They felt comfortable with that, and because I had done an assessment of my stuff, and I realized, I don't know how many pieces I have, but I've got like almost 18 portfolios that have artwork in them, and I don't know how that happens. It's just like over 20 years, you don't let enough things go. You do end up with a lot of things, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think it's but it does make me feel like, what am I going to do with all this? I mean, it makes you think that at some point you either got to, lose a few, go for that one really good example from an artist, instead of having 4 or 5. I mean, there's some artists, I mean, you know what I mean? It's an interesting dilemma to have, as collectors, when you realize it's kind of gotten out of control. But that one collector who I was talking to, I was just amazed that they felt really comfortable. Because 2 portfolios, that might be 44, 48 pieces maybe. And
there's definitely people who are very disciplined in the hobby. It's funny. One of my good friends, Jim Reed, has one of the biggest collections. But Jim Reed has everything in spreadsheets, and he rates them all. He gives them a number, and the number indicates like how expendable it is. Like never sell, you maybe sell, whatever. But to me, it's ironic that Jim has got this very orderly system, but he's got more art than anybody I know. So I'm not sure how well that works.
Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, and I've heard of that. A lot of collectors do maintain spreadsheets, and but for their own different reasons. I've never heard of rating.
Insurance too. Insurance is a big thing.
Wow. That's
But yes, rating them. I tried it for a while, and because I was just looking at my list when we were prepping for this thing, and I was like, oh, I did the rating thing, and you could see like I did it for a while, and then it just starts to peter out, and it's like, oh, nothing in the last like 6 years has been rated. Oh well, so much for that idea. I'm not sure that's how I would have decided how to sell stuff anyway. But Jim is a big numbers guy and very orderly about how he does things. So he used to do this thing at Comic-Con where he'd walk around the first day, like preview night or whatever it was, with a notepad, like a little like a reporter's notepad, and jot down everything he saw, and he would just go through and then cross stuff off as the show went by, and then go back and pick everything up from the last day, which doesn't work anymore because if you wait too long, it's gone. I think I tried that one time. I'm like, I'll wait, and then it was gone. But I did get that piece back later, the one I'm thinking of right now. So even though it was just a little sketch, that's the tough thing. The regrets of things you didn't buy usually outweigh the ones that you did buy. I lucky that I haven't bought too many things that I felt bad about getting sort of stuck with. So.
Yeah, I mean that's very true. I talk with a lot of dealers, and typically that first day sales are sometimes their best. I mean that, and those who wait to the end. But yeah, I mean there's a lot of collectors now who are savvy not to wait. If you see it, it's better to get it. The moment you see it, because usually there's somebody standing right behind you that will likely pick it up if you don't.
Well, the other thing is nice for like collectors like you and I have been around for a while. If I'm friends with Albert. If I say, will you set this aside for a little while? Usually I can get somebody to hold on to it for a little while I'm wrapping my head around the number of zeros on the price. But,
I do understand that. I don't think I've ever asked Albert to hold something for me, but he probably would, at least for a set amount of time. It would definitely be like it's an hour, Bill. Make up your mind.
He's gonna get mad at me. Everyone's gonna ask him to hold shit now.
Well, that's why he has that. What was the slogan on his shirt? Don't ask, just buy it, or whatever it was. But because he don't ask me any questions about it. Just pick it up, go on your way, or don't bother me.
That's right.
Marcus says I'm going to flip art that he's given me. No, I would never do that, Marcus. Gifts are, and I'm sure you're the same way, Kelvin, right? If you're gifted something, that's you never get rid of something that somebody gave you. I mean,
it's tough. It's tough. I oftentimes don't post things anymore on CAF because if it was a gift, because it just becomes too complicated. People are always like sort of giving like you're getting a barrage of people who want to buy this thing, and some people understand, and some people just keep going, and it's like, I'd rather just not deal with it. I don't want it. And also, it becomes trouble when you're trying to trade. Not that we trade anymore, but like at once upon a time, be like, I won't trade this piece unless you give me that one thing. And it's like, well, it's a gift. I can't give you that one thing. I'm sorry. Even if I didn't care that much about it, that's not really in me to do that. So,
right.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one. But you get lucky too. Also, you're in the hobby for a long time. You make friends with artists, that you admire, and that happens sometimes. You'll get something really, really great. I think there'll be a couple of things in there that I include. I'm like, I'll throw a couple things in here, but not everything.
So we started off with that Adam Hughes and then Dave Stevens inked piece. I mean, so that was the first thing that you picked up from him, where you had kind of commissioned him.
Yeah, I did that a couple more times, but I mean, for the most part, I would buy little things from him, and then because my group of friends, Dave Mandel and Jim Reed, and we all sort of got to be friends with Dave around the same time. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh God, this guy's great. You have to meet him. He's just a nice person. Let's go out to dinner or whatever. And that's just sort of how it became. And I find it really interesting when you become friends with an artist, like really just normal, just like guys hanging out and going to movies and stuff. It's a little different. You know what I mean? Like especially with Dave, I knew he was sort of hesitant to sell artwork. One of the funny reasons why he was hesitant to sell artwork was because he had no control of it. It wasn't that he didn't losing the art was one thing, but he was always afraid that someone that he didn't like would end up with the piece of art. But my point was that then we all became very sensitive. I didn't really ask him to buy art very much, as the friendship went on. It was expensive, but also, and I really felt like he should get what it was worth. And artists are terrible judging prices and stuff, trying to figure out what what the value should be. And so we tried to help him with that stuff. But like I don't have as big of a collection of Dave Stevens art as one might think, just because that wasn't really the nature of our friendship. I mean, I have some things, but it's he obviously, most people know he became ill, and then he was selling things that he needed to, and we were trying to figure out ways to help him out without having him, part with anything that was like gonna, break his heart, So that was a tough thing. We were a lot of strange gymnastics. I have a funny story. So he needs some money for something important, like life stuff, and I was like, what can we buy? What can we buy from him that he won't mind? So he had this a monochrome gray tempera painting of the Planet of the Apes, of all the like Dr. Zaius and all the sort of like elder orangutans and stuff. And it's like, I think he must have done it in like high school or college. It's a very old signature. And Dave Mandel loves monkeys and Planet of the Apes and all that stuff. And so I was like, oh my God, Dave really wants this piece. And so I can't remember what he offered him. But he was just, I'll give you X number of thousands of dollars for that piece. And Dave Stevens is like, really? He's like, I'm like, yes, he really wants that piece. This is so
Did he
funny.
get it?
No. But and like Dave Stevens just like flabbergasted. He didn't understand what was going on, but he just sort of nodded and went along with it. So,
Well, that's cool that he, I mean, a lot of artists are kind of the opposite. Once a piece of their art is out in the world, they're really kind of unconcerned with who owns it and if they flip it for more money or those sorts of things. I mean, but clearly it sounds like Dave was, he loved his work, and he was concerned with who got it. So that would make it very hard for him to sell. I would assume, with most of his pieces. So, but that's good too.
He wasn't that prolific. It wasn't like he did a lot of stuff. I mean, there are a lot of artists like Mike Mignola is great. He's a guy. There's a guy who's got a balance of business sense and artistic skill and integrity. But like I think when Mike sells something, like I don't think he cares what happens afterwards. You know what I mean?
But no, you're absolutely right. There just is not a lot of Dave's work out there, and there never really has been. I mean, just because there isn't, right? And
well, no, he kept a lot of it too because of the difficulty. I would say, I'll give you an interesting. I think he probably owned somewhere in the neighborhood of like 85, 87. I don't know why I'm throwing out that odd number, but of the total work he'd done from birth. I'm not kidding. He had, when his family had to go through everything, there was so much stuff. Like it felt like he never threw any. There were things that he gave away as gifts. You see a lot of early Rocketeer work that he gave a page to Al Williamson. He gave a page to Greg James. There's people that they're all signed, and you can kind of understand like how this happened. But yeah, he had a lot of it. So I mean, it's been 15 years now. So like like some of it's out there. I mean, a good bit of it's out there. There's still a lot of it's together. So. They just did a big exhibit in the Comic-Con Museum last year, from like March until Labor Day. Labor Day is the one September, right? I always get Labor Day and Memorial Day mixed up. And it was almost all stuff from the estate. So great collection of being able to see all of Dave's stuff, or a lot of it all in one place. So. And I thought his sister would like to keep doing that. So I think Cartier Art Museum is working on a exhibit. So. I hope people get to see this stuff in person. I think Dave Stevens is one of those guys with that inking line that like you can't really appreciate till you see. There's so many pieces I could think of that like I won't say they weren't printed properly. They printed it as best as they could. But if you see the actual art in person, it's amazing. It doesn't look. You just like, well, how it's just, what can I say? It's astonishing.
Well, I've seen a few pieces of his. I think. Probably from Albert's booth, because it's not it doesn't come up on the market too often, but I think in San Diego I've seen a few pieces by him. But yeah, I mean I've always loved his stuff. I mean, it's just there's no finer craftsman, and attention to detail, the way he drew women and men. I mean, he was just phenomenal. I mean, I can see why. I just wish I would have had the opportunity to have talked to him just once. To let him know how much his artwork really was incredible. And I clearly, so many creators cite Dave as one of their favorite artists of all time. And again, somebody who wasn't greatly prolific, but his work really touched a lot of people. And I think that, knowing, I haven't, just so you know, I haven't watched the documentary yet. I know it's actually, I can see it on Amazon, which it's been on my list for a while. I just double checked to make sure it was still there before.
Yeah, amazingly, it showed up on Amazon Prime, I think, at the end of July. We weren't given any notice. Someone just noticed it was there and we're like, hey, look, So yes, anybody who wants to see it, you can watch it on Amazon Prime now. If you have a subscription, it's just included. It's also on a bunch of other things. Tubi, there's some library services that have it, Hoopla, and another one that's not coming to mind. But it's iTunes, Google, what's that other one called? Vudu. It's pretty much wherever you might all the main streaming platforms.
Right.
So, and we did do a Kickstarter to do a physical release too. Just they don't really do Blu-rays. You can't go into a Target and buy a Blu-ray of a great documentary you saw on Netflix. They just don't do that anymore. So, which is a shame because it's about art, and I'd love to have a physical piece. Look, I still have my Frazetta documentary and the original DVD somewhere around here. I just think it's cool to have it. You know what I mean? Like in my my library, and be able to pick it up and look at it, look at the cover and all that stuff. So. But you were asked about the journey there, and we were friends. He was ill. He's a very interesting guy. We never really talked about him being sick. I think he was sick almost from the time we met, and I didn't know until 2 or 3 years later, but mainly through the community, and he never talked about it. I think he just assumed at some point I must know. And then I just assumed at one point that he must know that I know. And that was sort of it, I think at that point, maybe, if there were, because he used to keep his place very clean, you know what I mean? And I think then one day I was there and there was medication on the table or something that I figured normally would have been put away if someone was coming over. And that sort of was the point where it's I guess he doesn't mind. And, and because of the illness, he didn't get out very much. And you were saying about you wished you'd seen him. He just, he was very worried about being out crowds. He had a compromised immune system and all those things and stuff like that. We did get him out every once in a while. We did try and, it was let's take him out to dinner for his birthday or something. Let's go to Musso and Frank, some old Hollywood place, because he was hugely into that stuff. And he was a great sort of tour guide to have around town. Drive around a car in LA with Dave Stevens is awesome. He would just point out all kinds of crazy stuff as you're just driving around any part of town. But it'd be one of those things was okay, no one can be sick. If you sneeze, I'm throwing you out of the dinner. So.
Yeah, that's I mean, I get it. But so then, how did how did the whole documentary come about then? I mean, what was
for a few years, Dave Mandel and I helped with the estate, helping IDW, and obviously Scott Dunbier was instrumental. I mean, Scott Dunbier was really the reason a lot of the stuff got done, being the right person in the right place. He moved from DC Wildstorm to IDW in 09 or 20, I think 09. And it was right when we were trying to get the stuff reprinted, and it just ended up being perfect match. They got Laura Martin to recolor all the pages the way Dave wanted it to be done, and so that the art would all be consistent. He was always wanting to recolor things, because if you did a reprint and you had colors from 1983 or 82, Pacific, and then an Eclipse, and then all the way dark, then nothing would match. You know what I mean? Right. So it was important for him for it to all be uniform and look as good as it could. So I did that for a few years, and then basically nothing. I mean, it's a very random thing. I'll tell you how this happened. How this happened is COVID. It's one of the few things we have to thank COVID for. So my friend Rob Chatwin, who was the other producer and editor of the film, had just edited a Scotch whiskey documentary, and was supposed to premiere in Scotland, April of 2020. Of course, in March of 2020, everything shut down. You couldn't do anything. So he was sort of sitting around trying to decide what to do with his life next. He was a promo editor for FX TV network, and that's all he'd done, these little short spots, his whole 20-some year career. And I had written a screenplay that had been produced about a few months, 6 months before, fall of 2019. And then Robert Wyndham also was working on a rom-com that he had finished shooting just in the nick of time. I think they had like 1 weekend of running around LA doing pickups or something like that as everything was shutting down. But we were just sitting around not knowing what the future, what the future had in store for any of us in this respect. So we're sitting in this guy's backyard, which I have to go to like after this. And you know what I mean? It's COVID, right? So we're at the corners of a yard, you know what I mean? With a little table, and each person's got a table, a bottle, a glass, and an ashtray. And we're just sitting around like yelling across the yard. And Rob Chatelain says, "Hey, you know, I really enjoyed this experience of making a documentary. What do you think about like the three of us do one?" And we're like, "That sounds like fun. Like, what would it be about?" And he knew about the Dave Stevens connection. He knew that Wyndham and I had known each other, become friends that way. And so he said, "Well, how about Dave Stevens?" I actually had to think about it for a while. I didn't get back to him like in a week or something like that. It sounded like a good idea, but I had to think about whether I thought I could do it, you know, and do a good job at it. That's the main thing. Can I do this and do justice? And what am I trying to say? And what's the art going to be? All those things that, you know, actual practical. And then I said, "Yeah, okay, let's do it then." And then basically it was like starter pistol, bam. You know, we got a bleeding cool, like, like press release. This is like November of 2020, and then nothing because of COVID. We couldn't shoot any interviews.
Oh, man.
So we sat around doing what we call prep and research from like November of 2020 till April of 2021, and then we shot our first interview with Jim Silk. Jim Silk actually was going to be our guinea pig. He actually was willing to do it when we weren't supposed to do it, like at the end of 2020. But he actually got sick, not from COVID, but he had health issues, and then that sort of put it off also. So we actually interviewed him twice. If you see him in the movie, you'll see that he's in there like in two different settings, dressed differently. That's because we had to go back to, like, you know, being the first one, you make a lot of errors, and it's like, oh, we'll have to go back. Fortunately, he didn't mind. So and then we just shot on weekends. We just tried to interview 2 people a weekend, or if we didn't have someone to interview, we would shoot B-roll. We traveled up to the estate, spent a couple days there. One day was just shooting artwork and just like his old director's chair from Rocketeer movie, and like all the easels and unfinished paintings and whatever we could find. Tchotchkes, you know, he had a huge collection of all kinds of things also. And then we just did that as fast as we could. And you know, I think from the first interview until it came out was like 18 months. So pretty good, I thought, you know what I mean?
That is really good, actually.
You know, and really it was because of COVID. Like, everyone's working at home, you know, nobody knows what we're doing. I mean, I worked at home anyway, but like the other 2 guys, like, no one knows what they're doing, you know what I mean? Like, so we basically just, hopefully there's nobody listening. Well, actually, Rob's not with Fox anymore anyway. You know, like, we basically just did this instead of our jobs, you know what I mean, for that time. You know, I mean, we spent nights, so many nights editing, and you know, I mean, and people were great. Like all his friends were, everybody just was totally on board. Most people, first thing they said when we asked him was that if anyone deserves a documentary made about him, it'd be Dave. So that's the attitude that we got, and you know, obviously couldn't have done this without any of his all of his friends, family. You know, we got like his best friend from 3rd grade or kindergarten. You know, we got all the people we worked. You know, people worked at Hanna-Barbera all through the 70s, Comic-Con, Jackie Estrada. You know, all, you know, you name it. You know, we were lucky. You know, the only sort of bummer thing about it was, like, if I had done this, if I thought to do this 10 years earlier, then I would have had Bernie Wrightson, and then I would have had Harlan Ellison. You know, there were more people that might have been able to be in there. We tried to get all those people in there. Anybody who was important, you know, Al Williamson, we tried to get them in there somewhere, their voice, whether there was footage. You know, there was some footage left over from other documentaries that we were fortunately able to use, from McGinnis one, from the Frazetta one. Lance Laspina, the director of the Frazetta one, was very nice, gave us footage, you know. Yeah. So you know, I mean, like, again, we had goals too from the beginning, because 92 was the Rocketeer's 40th birthday. We had sort of set that as our sort of, okay, this has to be done out in that year, so we can say that it's for that. And IDW and Scott had done a bunch of you know books and stuff to commemorate that, and there was all just a lot of reasons to get off our asses and move fast, you know. And we did screen it at Comic-Con 2022, which was also, like I said, it was on the list of things that ended up becoming a sort of, I won't say test screening, but we thought we were done, but we weren't.
Did you get just feedback, thoughts from some collectors and other artists?
Yeah,
at that point?
Dave came to see it, Mandel came to see it, and our good friend Ryan Condell, his podcasting buddy, who's the showrunner of House of Dragon, he came and saw again.
Yeah.
A lot of great notes. My friend Brian Burke watched it. A lot of great notes there. Just I mean, like give it one more. And I really felt because of who we were making this about, we needed to really give it that effort. I mean, at least as much as we could. I mean, one of the funny things that Mandel said when we were working on the Rocketeer reprints was, we were just driving ourselves insane. We were driving ourselves insane. We were driving Scott Dunbier insane. He's got to be in there. We drove Scott Dunbier insane, and it was to try and basically put forth the same kind of perfectionist, meticulous. So if there was something that someone pointed out to me or something that could be better, I always felt like I needed to make the effort. I see Rich is asking about Steranko. I'm not sure what I wanted Steranko. Steranko was one of the first people that I talked to about it. He was really enthusiastic, but COVID and he had a lot of things happen to him, like storms that knocked trees down on his house and things like that. We tried everything. I mean, can we meet him at a show someplace? He was already doing an appearance, but then a lot of these appearances ended up getting canceled because of COVID. We tried. That was the one where we tried our best. I think Jim would have had some things to say that perhaps other people wouldn't have said the same way. But I do think that we got all the ideas we wanted in there. At a certain point, because it's a movie and it has to come out at some point. You have to
cut off the number of people you can try to interview. I mean, Jim had a pretty busy COVID. He had a gallery show in Youngstown, I think, that I went to. He had a lot of things going on and things that got canceled too. I think he had a show planned in Columbus. So, I mean, it doesn't always work out, but I get it. I know, I've done a few minor things, just interviews and editing wise, and I can only, at some point you have to call it quits and, just kind of put it all to bed and do the best you put the best product out there that you could. And I think that it's great that you got to do that test screening and, to have some feedback from Dave. I'm surprised Dave wasn't popping in, checking out where it was at throughout the whole process.
He was busy. Obviously, he was working on his own show. He was out of town for a lot of time shooting White House Plumbers in upstate New York, so he wasn't even here. And look, I thought we would shoot 25 interviews. We shot 35 interviews. Right. It was 80 hours of interview footage alone, not counting the B-roll or anything with Dave in it. You know what I mean? And so we had to somehow figure out a way to. I always felt the best 90 would end up being not 90, 99 minutes. The best 99 minutes were always going to be better if we shot more. You know what I mean? The cream would just keep rising. Would just keep, So. And we did keep windows open. Like Steranko was a guy where I tried to keep the window open until the very end on the off chance that something might happen. But like you said, this is look. Any artists that are in this chat will test this. Works of art are never completed; they're only abandoned. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it that way because I don't want to feel like I abandoned anything, but it's absolutely true. There's no perfecting this. Not really. You know what I mean? It's a subjective thing. And even for Dave, his sense of perfection was what he saw in his head. If it didn't come out the way he saw it in his head, then he wasn't satisfied. Whereas I didn't really know exactly. I knew some things. There's some things that are in the movie that were always in my mind. And then there are things that changed, too. I won't spoil it for you, Bill, because you haven't seen. But the ending of the movie was something I had in my head. The ending was something that I sort of had, from when I started, how it was going to. How to make a story like this work, because you don't want it to be too sad, Mm-hmm. Obviously I want the low bar was this: if people watch this thing and come away from it and can say they felt something, if I can make you feel something with this movie, if we can make the whole team, then that's we did something, we accomplished what we wanted to do. And so I do think that worked out.
Rich Danny says, who knew Dave as well, said Cookie at the end had me.
Yeah. Yes, John Kukasakis is a good friend and comic book dealer. He was in it a lot and just a great character. We're very lucky in having a great wide range of voices in terms of cadences and talking styles. We have guys like Jim Silk who talk so slow that we realize, oh, we can speed him up a little bit in the editing. And we have guys who are like super energetic. I mean, Bruce Timm is like a ball of of fury in this thing, and Jaime Hernandez is just hilarious, and Kukasakis also, Kuki, he's great too. So it was good to have a balance of people, who were like, Bill Stout, very, he's done a lot of interviews. He knows what he's doing. He's very clean, sharp, same with Mark Evanier, but then you want some people who like, they think of something in the middle of your interview. That's what we were trying to get, because
Sure.
you want this thing not, there has to be a reason why it's a documentary, not a podcast. That's what I always say on set. Like, look, there has to be a reason why people want to or need to watch this, right? Not just not listen to it. Otherwise, it could just be an audio thing, So,
Right. No. Well, it's very different. Podcasts are a lot. They're very much off the cuff, and you wanted to put together a something a product that you could be really proud of, and that the family. You were honoring Dave's, legacy. I think. I mean, that is different. I mean, because we could sit around and talk like we're doing right now, but I'm not hopeful that we're making something that's going to change people's perceptions on.
Well, I don't know, Bill, but maybe we talk more. Maybe if we talk more often, it shows that you don't know what can happen.
That is very true. That is quite true.
But I do think you're right. I think that like more people, there are more subjects. There are more people there that deserve. I mean, half the people in the documentary could have anchored their own documentary. They have careers that are long and storied. Jim Silk, Evanier, Bill Stout. I mean, a lot of these people, Danny Bilson, Joe Johnston. I mean, all these guys could have their own documentary. And that's the one thing that I also thought. And Mike Kaluta, like when Mike Kaluta wanted to talk about the studio, I just let him talk about whatever. Talk about the formula. It's like, just keep talking. Somebody someday might do something. Might do a documentary and need this footage, and then I'll be there to be like, here you go. Like
right.
And that would be pretty wonderful. I think to have all that effort kind of live on and go on to other uses.
No, it's very true. I mean, the studio is going to have it's the 50th anniversary, I think, in 2024, right? So, again, but those are things you think about it. That's why we need documentaries like like what you did out there, because there's just so much that just hasn't been written down. There's not enough books written about the creators and the hobby, and we're losing so many daily, it seems, anymore. I mean,
especially the last few years.
Away. I mean. Tom Palmer passed away a year ago. I mean, people who, I would have loved to have gotten on a live stream like this and talked to them for a couple hours. I feel fortunate. I got to talk with Neil Adams a few times before he passed. It's, that
was what a shocker that was. I mean, we could have had Neil Adams on. I mean, we talk about him in the documentary. Wouldn't it be great for him to have told the story himself?
Exactly. And hey, I saw earlier, Whitley, thank you for becoming a subscriber and for the super sticker. I appreciate that a great deal. And thanks
to Troy Pierce for the compliment on the research we did. I mean, I knew a lot about Dave's work just from working on the books and stuff like that. But once you start to delve into, oh my God, the guy lived so many places. We start off the timeline charting everywhere he lived in LA and when. I don't know why, just trying to place people and where he was living with when he was working at Hanna-Barbera, or he lived with Joe Chido for a while, and just where was that? It was like, oh, that was tough. You know what I mean? We're looking at photographs and looking at house numbers in the photographs. Like, wait, is that the house? That's the house. So that actually did happen. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
No. I mean, but again, that's part of the whole process. I mean, you're trying to get inside his mind, about where he lived, and all that kind of probably ties back and relates to the stories of the things that he knew about where he lived, and the places he liked to eat, and the history of certain things. So, I mean, but that all goes into the psyche of what Dave was all about, what he enjoyed about life, and the things around him. So. I can guarantee you, Kelvin, that I will watch the documentary right after the show or tomorrow afternoon. I guarantee it, because it's funny. I saw it in July when it popped up, and I was like, I can't believe it. It's finally I can actually watch it as part of my Amazon Prime membership. So, but hey, what we might as well. I have the trailer queued up, so that for those of you who haven't seen it, like myself, or weren't aware of it, I can show you the trailer. It's on YouTube, and then I know I saw Kazra posted a link to the full video over on Amazon, and I didn't link that in the show description, but I'll certainly do that after the show so we can have it in there. But but let me go ahead and play the trailer, and then we can kind of talk a little bit more here. Let's see, get this queued up over there, and here we go.
Being an artist is a very solitary lifestyle. You sit in a room by yourself and you draw.
Dave Stevens was a once-in-a-lifetime artist.
I know what I want out of it, and I demand everything out of myself.
I saw the Rocketeer, and I was like, what is this? Looks like some kind of scrawny Doc Savage-y looking guy with a rocket pack. God, this guy can draw.
His lines were so clean and so sharp. There's a certain magic involved. That passion for what he's doing.
I threw in everything I loved as a kid and just stirred up the pot.
How do you take this masterpiece and move it to the screen?
The thing about the Rocketeer, we were pitching at it as an adventure movie like Doc Savage or Indiana Jones.
In the comic, the Jenny character was based on Betty Page.
Holy cow, now you're talking.
She's been my ideal female figure since I was a kid.
Thing about him is he loved women, and not in a dirty way. He just loved women.
He captured the spark in their eyes.
I think he just really wanted to see me naked.
That's what got him into all kinds of trouble.
In the back of my mind, I always thought, Dave wants to be a real outlaw.
Good girl during the day and the naughty girl at night.
Dave definitely lived his life the way he drew.
Oh my God, he was a pain in the...
Everything had to be perfect.
This is what it's like to pursue a life as a individual.
It's like a diamond, you can't rush a diamond.
He changed the way I saw life, beauty, reality, love. He's unique, and you just wish there was more of it.
You want to know who David Stevens was? Look at what he drew.
Well, I'm looking forward to soon. And,
there it is. There it is.
Yeah.
It reminded me of something else too. The other thing that was a challenge was to try and do something that was well-rounded and, it's the cliche, warts and all. But, on the one hand, you're trying to make a documentary, make a movie that tells the story of who this person was, their great artist and their contribution to that world. And but also, like it was someone I knew. So like, I'm trying to figure out how to, how can I convey who this person was to me, like a human being with all their quirks and things that other things, that that are in there that I don't understand myself, but they were part of who he was. And I felt like, if you put all those things in there or enough of them, that other people will see it and also sort of get the same kind of impression, just like I did the first time that I met him and experienced some of these things, That's a tough thing. How do you sum up a person, and like he's just not really possible, So
right, and in an hour and a half, right? Exactly.
Right, yeah, no. So we did obviously had to concentrate on certain things, and I hope there's a good amount of drama in there as well as just the straight information stuff, and art. We tried to cram as much art as humanly possible in there. It's one of those things where it's like, I wish everyone could just watch it in 4K because the art doesn't look as good in regular high def. But like, you put it on and I don't even know how to do that. I guess you'd have to stream it, right, to get 4K off iTunes or Amazon or something like that. I guess we didn't make a high def UHD Blu-ray of it or anything like that. So,
well. Yeah. Well, I regret not seeing it before we got this thing started, but
no, it'll be a surprise now. Now I get to hear your. It's like we'll see how this. I oversell it or not. That's I get to find out from you.
No. Well, I am looking forward. Well, why don't we? The thing is, we should probably look at some of the artwork because we got about an hour or a little less than an hour that we have allotted for us today because you have a very important meeting
I owe you this part. This is the subject of the broadcast, right?
Exactly, and I did kind of move some of the Dave. Well, I think most of the Dave Stevens art to the top of the list here, so we can kind of start from there. Now, I've already shown the Adam Hughes piece that he inked over, but I think we've got a few different things here to look at.
Oh yeah, so this is an interesting story. When we were doing the documentary, when I interviewed Danny Bilson, he remarked, I don't know if it was during the interview or in between, that he and Paul DeMeo, who were the original writing team on the Rocketeer screenplay for the Disney film, they had written a short Rocketeer story, a comic book story that hadn't been published, and that he had wished that there was some way for that to happen because Paul had passed away in 2018, so he was no longer with us, and so this was really the last Bilson DeMeo Rocketeer story possible. And then I mentioned this to Adam Hughes when I interviewed him, and Adam basically said, "Well, I'll draw it." And I thought that I don't know how it could be any more perfect than that, because Adam is, in many ways like Dave's successor, and even
Oh yeah.
I know it plagued Adam, but I mean, Dave would say stuff like that to him, like we'd refer jobs to him, and Adam would be like, he just didn't want to do it. But so here's an example of Adam's pencils and inks on the right, and then how it looked with the Laura Martin coloring, and no, I'm sorry, is that right? No, I think Adam colored this himself. Yes, that's what am I saying? Adam colored it himself. But there's an example of what it looked like before and after. It's just it's an interesting thing. We end up doing this one shot comic book to promote the documentary. That just I tried to use as many people humanly possible. That I think there's 8 people that worked on it that were credited in the documentary. So that was sort of the goal there.
Sure. No, I mean, well, Adam and Laura are a great combination if those were her colors. But yeah, I did actually skip over a couple questions from
I see someone. I don't know if I have any props to run through.
Right. Well, here's one. I mean, Matt Kennedy gave you props from. He said I watched the documentary last week and it's very good. And he can pick apart docs all day long. So good job on that one. And then a question from Rich Danny's where he asked about how difficult was it to get the rights to use the old Greg Theakston video interview material.
This is very interesting. Greg Theakston gave the estate the raw footage years ago. Shortly after Dave passed away, he sent discs of the footage on was it DVD or something, because it was old broadcast NTSC. He sent me footage, all of it, to give to Jennifer. It would have been Dave's mom at that point, would have been Carolyn Stevens, and it was just like, if anybody ever has any use for this, here it is. And then we also had an hour or so worth of footage from Stan and Vince, these 2 artists in France that he worked with on the last Rocketeer Adventures magazine. Stan Minucci and Vince Roche. Also, it was just them clowning around. Same thing. Like, if you ever have any use for this, here's this VHS tape. And obviously, like, we've made good use of them. Unfortunately, Greg also passed away. Another person who passed away. A lot of, as you said, like, just keep losing people. And that was very lucky because Dave, for all of his care, for if you ever saw him, like, he was very well put together and very deliberately put together, sharp dresser. You think a guy like that would bump into a video camera every once in a while, but he passed away before, like, smartphones and selfies were a big thing. I mean, now if you were to do a documentary about a living artist who went to shows, you'd have some footage. I mean, like, we barely had anything. There was a guy in France, Patrice Lunet, I think his name is, who gave us some footage from a show in France. So we made use of as much as we could, but that was a tough thing. And then there's a lot of audio in there. The audio is from, I did an interview with Dave. Just wasn't even meant to be an interview. He was working on Brush of Passion, a year or so before he passed away. And the editor, Arnie Fender, suggested, why don't you do an interview with him, and maybe it'll help generate some ideas that he can use for writing the prose of the book. So that's why that existed. It was just him and I talking, and we took a break in the middle to go eat dinner, and then came back and just talked some more. So it wasn't I had a list of questions, but it was basically just to prompt him to talk and think about things. So it was nice because it was very relaxed and not, he was not so, I think he was more candid in that interview, just because we were just talking and it wasn't really, he didn't have to watch how he said things and all that stuff. So,
right.
I mean, look, otherwise it was funny. Some of the interviewees would give me an answer, and halfway through the answer they would stop and they would say, "Wait a minute, let me start over again. I can phrase that better." And they would start over again, but it would be really boring and sort of stayed the second time, but they would finish it up nicely. So then, and my editor Rob was like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry. We'll just use the first part and then we'll end with the end." So that happened a lot, because it was always the first thought was always the more spontaneous one, and that was the great thing about, when Dave and I were sitting around, that there weren't any takes. It was just talking. Right. I'm shocked that the audio was good enough because I used like some really early digital hand recorder. See, when I first started writing, I used to carry this recorder around, like Twin Peaks, like talk into it, like, "Hello, Diane," and just trying with my yelling random ideas and stuff that I would never use later. But and so that's what I had to do this, and I'm shocked that it actually held up quality wise. But we had to do a lot of that stuff because all the footage was old, NTSC broadcasts, so it had to be upconverted, and we had a guy, fortunately, who could do that stuff for us, and make it as good as it could look. I mean, obviously, you can't add resolution, but I think it looked okay, and obviously, to show something from a time period and make it dated, sometimes that works for you.
Right. Well, that's pretty cool that Arnie Fenner was the one who suggested doing that. I mean, he's another guy who deserves a documentary and some books written about him. I mean, he's just an incredible. I don't know. I mean, he started Spectrum. At the end of the day, he's been a huge advocate for the arts in many ways, and again, a patron of the arts. He has one of probably the more amazing art collections out there. I mean, I only just seen a few of the things that he owns, and so. But yeah, again, but cool. He's a very smart guy. A guy who.
No, really... we worked a lot on Brush because Dave passed away while it was still in progress. So there was that mad scramble for most of 2008 where we were just trying to figure out where are all the pieces? How do you do this thing? So and so yeah, no, he and with Spectrum and all that stuff, he's done a lot for.
He did, and Spectrum always had a. Well, I don't know if they had it from the start, but I know somewhere in the middle of those, they started having a section for comic artists and illustrators that kind of fell out. He was making people aware of them as fine artists at the end of the day, and really one of the first, I think. So yeah, Arnie, he's an important figure in our hobby and somebody that most people don't even know, what his contributions have been. So I should reach out to him, see if I could get him on some point.
One of only 2 Dave Stevens oil paintings that he actually signed was published in Spectrum, and I think Dave signed it just so that Arnie could publish it, but in Dave's mind he wasn't done. So when it came back to him, afterwards he just kept working on the thing. So
wow. Man, well, I know we got to get back to the art, but there was a number one Marvel fan did ask, do you own any props from the Rocketeer movie?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think now. I mean, I've had friends who've had helmets and packs and things like that. I mean, I think I have maybe one of the signs from the Bigelow signs. I might have one of those placards somewhere, and I think I might have one of the Rocket Pack blueprints, maybe. I mean, nothing great. I mean, I have the clapperboard. I have the slate. Actually, the slate is on the other side of my desk because I borrowed it from Mr. Mandel to use as set deck for. And actually, I borrowed the helmet from Chuck Costas, who everybody knows, also who let me borrow that from when we interviewed Joe Johnson. So that somewhere in my mess of an office is that clapperboard. But no, I don't. I'm trying to think. It's one of those things I've thought about. I think it'd be great to have a Bulldog Diner menu. Something small that maybe has a little bit of sort of Dave sensibility in it. But I don't think so. I'm trying to think now. Nothing. The right thing hasn't come my way. I'm sure there's probably something small that I'm just not thinking of. But like, sorry, I don't have anything great like that. And like I said, that was sort of before my time. I mean, Dave had stuff. I mean, he had stuff at his place, and he had a big maquette of Lothar's head, and it was unpainted. And he had a Bulldog Cafe, like a miniature, and he had I never saw it, but I know he had the hats from the Zeppelin. You know, the hats that he, you know, like on top. Yeah, I know he had that, and he because I've seen the drawing, because I think it's got a number on it, 7 or 5 or something like that, and I remember finding a tissue drawing at some point, and it was like, hey, it's the number from the thing, you know. So
Nick Verrucci wanted to know if there would ever be an extended release, since you have so much footage.
It's funny, you know, Jennifer's biggest comment has always been like, why is it, make it longer? And it's like, oh, this has to be something that like the general audience can watch. And I don't think so. I mean, if you look at unfortunately, I don't think you can watch this on Amazon, but the Blu-ray has, and the YouTube channel, actually, they're all on the YouTube channel. We did take a bunch of great stories that were in previous cuts, were cut together well enough to be able to put together, add some B-roll and music. And so there's like, I think 7 or 8 of those on whatever YouTube channel we use to promote the Kickstarter and on the Blu-ray. You know, like our first cut was like 4 hours and 5 minutes, but it's basically everybody saying everything. So, you know, when you cut it down, you have to pick and choose like who's the best person to say each thing. So there's a lot of, you know, in the 80 hours, it's not all 80 hours of different stuff, you know.
Right.
And it's a lot of stuff like my interviews were like pretty exhaustive. So like, you know, with the Kaluta thing, you know what I mean? There might be an hour of him talking about the studio. I mean, that's not, you know, anything I can put into a Dave Stevens documentary. Or Joe Johnston talking about how he got started, you know what I mean, on working on Star Wars and things like that. So there was a lot of stuff in there that you know was sort of ancillary to what we were talking about. But I felt like you just need to get these guys talking. Once you get them talking and thinking, then stories come to mind. Things. And I did a lot of research, listening to podcast interviews with these people, reading them as well beforehand to try and get the story that everyone knows on camera. But also, where can I take the next step? Where did that person who interviewed them stop? And where I could kind of take it a little bit further and maybe dig a little bit deeper. So that was a lot of it. But I mean, the movie that's there is really the movie that I, in the end, wanted. I mean, we could have cut it a little shorter, even, I think. But I think this is what I wanted to say. And so I doubt it. I also don't know how you would do this. Like, what would be the venue? You know what I mean, like, I'm gonna do another Kickstarter. So like, you know, like 300 people can have this 9-hour cut of something. I don't know. It's unlikely. Also, like I said,
if you put some of those clips out there, though, I mean, that's
we tried. We tried, because there were definitely things in there. Like, look, Dave loved old cars, a huge fan of old cars, and I would have loved to. There's guys one of the guys I wanted to interview just for my own selfish reasons was he was good friends with Robert Williams, the artist, and I thought, oh my God, maybe I could, like, but what would I don't know what I would have him say where it would be in there. There's photographs of him in there. There's a lot of guys I wanted to interview that I got in there through B-roll, but I don't think I could have justified a shoot day with them,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking like now, like Nick's making me have like nightmares of all mix sessions and things like that. You change one thing, you move one thing, and it's like now the music's all off, and
right,
and all that stuff. So it's tough, it's not an easy thing to go back and do. And I want to do, I'd like to move on and do another thing sooner rather than later.
Cool.
Well, yeah.
You'd have my support, whatever it is. I'm sure.
Thanks, man. I do appreciate that. Now back to the art.
Now back to the art, and here let's jump to something cool here.
Oh yes, okay. So that's the Pacific Presents #2 cover. It was Dave's. Dave's always said it was his favorite Rocketeer cover. So when I had a chance to purchase one, I just that was why that's why I just thought it was be cool to have. And doesn't have the helmet on. Some people might have a not pick it because of that reason, but I always love that image. And it has a sort of the spotlight, and it's very reminiscent of Golden Age covers, Batman covers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Dave, there's a lot. You can go through these things and you can see him playing homage to all kinds of stuff. He did this. I don't know if you've ever seen it. He did a commission. It was a wedding present. It was a Captain America and Red Skull. And the Red Skull sort of this genie in it, and it's basically like Dave doing a Captain America version of the Detective, I think 69 cover, where the Joker is a genie and like Batman and Robin are small. He's towering over. It's sort of, to me, like Tim paying homage to that. And so, I because I have this background where I loved a lot of the Golden Age stuff, Golden Age DC art as a kid, and not knowing that it was old. Those things really speak to me, and his appreciation for that stuff. We would talk about that a lot. He would always grumble at me because I like Bob. I actually liked Bob Kane's art. When you could find it had this sort of crudeness to it and sort of darkness that I liked, but it was very stiff, and that's basically how you can tell if it's real or not.
So is this a piece? How long have you owned this artwork?
Not too long. Maybe a year or two tops. And now my brain is starting to. Maybe like a little over a year, maybe. It's August now. I guess longer than that. Yeah, a little over a year.
So it's something you were looking for that example. I mean, were you looking for that specific cover, or was it just the opportunity?
No, not specifically. It was more the opportunity came along. I just lucked out into it. I don't have any other way of
right.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if because a lot of people seek specific pieces from from an artist, and so.
No. I mean that's the tough thing. I mean, like trying to find, and I've been lucky a couple times in my life, in my collecting career, trying to find like one page. One cover's a little bit easier, but trying to find one thing is a tough thing. And some collectors, like my buddy Jim Reed, if he wants an example, he just wants an example. It doesn't have to be an exact image.
Right.
Sometimes you remember something, and it doesn't have to be a cover. I mean, I always tell this to Bill Sienkiewicz. Like I have a page from Daredevil, the Daredevil graphic novel, Love and War, the one Miller wrote.
Yeah.
And it's most people look at it and go, nothing page, but I said, Bill, this is the page where I decided you were a genius. Because I didn't understand his art that much before that. And I'm like, oh my God, he knows exactly what he's doing. So he always gets a kick out of that one. And Daredevil's not on it or anything. There's no Daredevils. No, it's just there's so much stuff going on the page where I'm like, oh, everything is on purpose. I understand, because you look at his early Bob Peak stuff. If you read comics before, like his New Mutants run and stuff, he was doing more than Neil Adams style. You don't quite, as you're a kid, you're in your teens, you don't quite understand what you're seeing, and then eventually it sort of clicks and you're like, oh my God. So, I mean, that's another example. I got lucky with a few of those things. There's another one. I'll wait until it comes up to bring up, but what do you got? What do you got next for me? Yes. So this is one that's on here. This is a gift. So I can't, this is buried with me. So this was, when we finished the this is a piece I always wanted to this is a piece I wanted to own. I wanted to buy from Dave Stevens, but like never could bring myself to ask him because I just felt like we were friends, and I don't know, I just wouldn't have, I think the closest I ever got to ask him was I said to him one time, I said, is there any chance that someday you would think about figuring out some way for me to maybe talk about buying this piece from you? And he said, sure. And that was that. And I was like, okay. But his mother gave this, and his sister gave this to me when we finished the Rocketeer reprints, the Complete Rocketeer Adventures Deluxe Edition. I delivered a proof for whatever the heck, however the news was broken. And I went up to see them. They gave me this cover. So this is, probably one of my favorites. It's probably my favorite Dave piece. Mainly because he's in it. I realize he's drawing himself as a Rocketeer, and so he's in all those too. But I like this piece because it's like the Norman Rockwell self-portrait, and it's got like he has his cartoony chops in it, and there's the girl that's on the drawing board, and it's got he's doing the like wash, the or wash, the tones. I mean, and it's self-deprecating. There's just it's just sort of like kicking on all the cylinders to me. I just love it. So that's what that is.
Right. For those who haven't seen the published cover to the Comics Journal, here you can see it here.
Yes. So yes, it was originally published as Comics Journal 117 cover, and it was also, I think, published in the Just Teasing poster book, or maybe as a print. I think Dave named it Little Egypt later on.
Wow. Well, that's one hell of a gift, man. That's wonderful.
Yeah. No. It was. Yeah. It was very flattered. Obviously, it was quite a moment. Like I said, I didn't have much. I think I owned one cover of his before that, and then I owned the Who's Who, the DC Who's Who Catwoman piece. That was something that actually Dave Stevens himself helped me get. I didn't buy it from him. Oh, that's a funny story. You don't have that piece, do you?
If it's in your CAF, I can pull it up while we're.
All right, so I thought I took a photo of it because the CAF picture is like grayscale. Anyway, Dave apparently had sold or given that piece to a local a store owner. I think a bookstore owner or a comic book store owner. I was never quite sure, but I remember it was in Burbank, and the guy was on hard times, and he was going out of business, having to sell the store, and he brought the piece to Dave to ask him if he wanted it back, and Dave told him, no, you should sell the piece, like you need the money, like by all means, please. And then he called me up and said, hey, you said you always wanted this piece, right? I'm like, yeah, and I was like, I just bought something else. I can't remember what, and I was trying to be like, disciplined. That's the right word that we don't use very much. I was trying to be disciplined.
No, we don't.
And yeah. And so he's like, well, my friend's selling it, you know what I mean? I'm like, I really want this thing. And, worked out a price. And I was just like, I can't quite afford this piece. And Dave said, well, how much are you short? I was like, I'm short. Like, it's like, I'm short. Like it was like $1,000. And Dave Stevens spotted me. He spotted me $1,000 for me to buy a piece of his art that he had given or sold to another guy. So that's the kind of person that Dave was. I paid him back as fast as humanly possible. So I'm trying to remember. I don't want to drive anybody crazy in the chat here, but it was at the time a lot of money for me, but now people would laugh at me for thinking at all about it, because it was a piece that I really loved a lot. This is another piece that has a lot going for it, with the swinging figure, but then you've got the portrait and you've got the great little vignette at the bottom, which was Dave's favorite piece, was the vignette, Batman and Catwoman at the bottom. I just, another one that's sort of firing on all cylinders. And a cool thing about it is, with me and Dave Mandel and Jim Reed being close friends, we actually, the three of us actually own the 3 pinups Dave did for Who's Who in the DC universe now. So Jim has the Dolphin, and Dave has the Fan Lady. So it's kind of a neat thing because we were all friends with Dave, and
right.
I just find it be kind of a neat,
No, it's gorgeous, and I did forget that you gave me this piece, so I'm glad I dug it up. But
at least one I had a story for, So
right. No. I mean, and that's. So he actually gifted it to someone before, so at least he knew where it was. I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it was like hanging up in the back of some guy's shop. I was framed and hanging up in the shop. Because I think when I got it, it was still in the frame.
No, congrats, and great that he was able to help you make it happen. I mean, financially too. I mean,
that was just, I was completely blown away. I also felt very like, oh my God, how fast I got to figure out some way to pay this guy back. I can't let this debt sit around for too long. Very flattering too. Just that he would be so kind to help me out with that.
Yeah, no, it's a gorgeous piece. And it's interesting what he'd pick out as being the thing, within this drawing as being his favorite. That moment there at the bottom. But
character. He was all about getting the character in there. If you look at the hand and the chin, and just the way her face is simple, the expression, and how Batman's looking down, and it's it's really quite a little exquisite vignette in this whole thing. So
yeah. Let's see. I've got one other, I think, here from Dave.
Yes. So this is a funny one. So Dave had done a sketch like this in someone's sketchbook. It was like ballpoint. It was like black and red, I think. It was like ballpoint. It was neat, but it was tiny. It was like, I don't know, like maybe 4x6 or something like that. It had been, I think, cut out of a sketchbook. And I was thinking about buying it because it was for sale. And I was asking Dave what he thought. He said, "You're crazy. Why would you buy that thing?" I was like, "Well, I really like it a lot." He's like, "It's nothing. It's stupid. Why would you want to buy it?" I said, "I like the image." He goes, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'll just draw you a better one." I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yes." And so this is how it turned out. But the funny thing was, he would keep showing this to me. I go over to his house and he'd be like, "This is in my sketchbook, in my balance sketch." He was showing it to me, and like every time he showed it to me, he'd be like, "It's not quite done yet. Needs more hair." And then like 3 months would pass, and I go back and see it again and be more hair and be, "Oh my God, you've outdone yourself. This is awesome. It's perfect. I love it." He goes, No. Just wanted to show it to you. I'm not quite done yet. And then like after 9 months or something like this, I get the piece. Like, awesome. This is great. Thank you so much. I think we ended up doing a trade for it. I think I may have, actually, this is gonna be funny. I may have actually traded him like a Adam Hughes Wonder Woman cover because he liked Adam's work. And then years later, like maybe 2 years later, I caught him looking at it. He goes, too much hair. May have to go back and fix that.
Oh man.
So that was Dave Stevens for you, and I was like, "This is perfect. Stop touching it. Get no, don't.
Right. Well, you can see Rick and Troy both mentioned the hair, immaculate hair, healthy Maryland hair, and he was fixated on it himself.
Yeah, no, and but Dave was funny about that. Like I said, he sees something and it wasn't quite the way he wanted it to be. I remember, this is a really funny story. I had a partially inked Frank Cho piece, and Dave and Frank were friends. And Frank Cho, he was going to do a pinup for "Cry for Dawn" for Joe Linsner's book, and so it's like it's a big scene like Dawn and like Death is holding her, and there's all these other figures flying around, like angels, or whatever. But it's really just the two figures that are done. And Frank sort of just stopped, like inking it. So like the Death figures kind of inked, the Dawn is almost completely inked, but like he's got like one arm sort of draped down. It's in my cap, but like Dave kept trying to get it from me so he could finish it. He's like, driving me crazy. I really love this piece, but like he should have. Why didn't he ink that arm? I just have it? He wanted me to loan it to him so he could just ink the arm because it was driving him crazy. And I didn't let him do it. And I'm an idiot for not letting him do that. I should have just said, "Here you go. Go to town, ink as much as you want." But yeah, right. That would have been I actually had been trying to get him to ink a Frank Cho piece too. So you see the drapery on the arm going down, like on the that you can sort of see there. Down to the hand. He didn't want to do the whole thing, just down to where the skeletal hand is coming out. He wanted to just finish that up. This is a great little piece that's unfinished, but still very beautiful. And yeah, so that drove Mr. Stevens bananas. And I always remember the people like, why did you not? Let's see. What else? What else do we got?
Well, we got a lot. We have a lot. I know we're not going to get through it.
Oh yes, all. I love Arthur. So this is a piece that I got courtesy of Mr. Mandel. I always wanted an early long shot piece. This is one of the first artists I followed just for the artist when I started collecting again in 82, 83, something like that. We did a deal, and I just love it. It's early, but God, look at those inks and I think I'm pretty sure it's, maybe if you read the top, it was like a pitch piece or maybe internal ad or something like that. But it's, it's just, I don't know, that strikes all the nostalgia for me, back when Arthur looked like that. So.
No, I completely agree. I mean, when Art came on the scene, especially with Longshot, I mean, he made people, look twice, at his stuff. I mean, I was blown away from the moment Longshot came out, and you knew you were looking at something that was was very unique, stood out from all of the other creators at the time, and he's kind of kept that energy and unique quality to his work to this day. I mean, he's more sought after today than he was 20 years ago. It's amazing,
It's interesting to see guys like Arthur who don't seem to miss a beat. They just keep going, I think that's pretty cool. Another friend of mine from the same era also hasn't lost a beat is Kelly Jones, and I think I gave you a Kelly piece. If you can pull that up, would be a good.
Let's see here. Let me
the poster piece. That should be a
yes. I'm just trying to. My numbering's a little different than the way I got them from you.
There we go. Okay, this is one of the great triumphs of my like collecting career, whatever you want to call it. Was I always wanted a piece of Kelly's Dead Man art, and I've known him for almost as long as I've known Doug Mintz. He's 91, 90, something like that. And we actually met over the phone. I actually didn't meet him in person until I started coming to Comic-Con. But he had Kelly doesn't really sell his artwork, so he had all the Dead Man pages, with the exception of like I think a couple that he'd given away as gifts, and I think he sold like 2 pieces. I think to Scott. Scott's still in there. I think he sold 2 of them through Scott, and this was one of them. This and I think the Who's Who piece. And I missed this the first time this came up for sale. It was one of Scott's guys who worked for him had purchased it and he put it up for sale. I just was this close and just barely missed it. In fact, the other person was sort of thinking it over, and then when I came in, that sort of like, okay, I'll take it. And then I kept in contact with him, and he was a big Dead Man collector, and that was his theme. So I knew it was going to be tough, but I just kept in touch with the guy for, I don't know, a decade or more, just made sure that he knew that I really loved it. And in the end, when he was selling his collection, I don't know if he had other concerns or he just, moved on to collecting something else. I was Eric Safinga. People might know him because he, like I said, he was a well-known collector for many years.
Mm-hmm.
He contacted me and we did a deal. And it's funny. Kelly only drew the left side of the wallpaper in the background. And so it was kind of an oddball piece to see displayed because it only had half that detail. And it was, statted to make the other half. And also none of the lettering was there. So what I did was I made a mirror image on vellum and cut it all out. I cut it all out and put it on there. And then I tried to find the right font and everything and get all that worked out. And then Eric saw it and he's like, why didn't I think of that? I said, I was like, it's just like I would have kept it. No, I owe that to him. And then Kelly, because we were friends, is very happy. He was just happy that somebody he was friends with got it. And like I said, he only sort of sold those 2 pieces. I don't remember why, but yeah. And I think the only other than that, I think he sold a couple pieces to Stephen King, who liked the book. So good company. I'll take it.
Exactly. Let's see.
But look at that detail, and this guy hasn't lost a step either. He's amazing.
No, he hasn't. I mean, I've always liked his stuff. I see Marcus in the chat. Marcus has a long-standing commission with Kelly.
No, I know, Mark. I was waiting for that. Because I've tried to help Marcus before. I failed miserably.
There you go. Marcus says I would wait 3,439 days for this.
It was a long time. It was really it was a tough one.
Yeah. No, well, I think we've all got stories like that. I mean, I commissioned Dave Cockrum a couple of years before he passed, and then he passed. I never got the art. I mean, well, anybody who's been in this hobby for a long time, has had, issues here or there. I mean, it just is what it is. I mean, you can't.
Commissions are tough. It's always a gamble. It's a gamble because you don't know how the pieces gonna come out, and you just don't know.
Yeah. Or if you're never gonna get them right.
Right.
Exactly.
No, you need to have the right temperament. You know what I mean? For the risk of I don't know if
that's the thing. You have to, right? You can't take them personally. I've known a lot of collectors, who they're accepting of that, and then other ones. And this isn't me talking about Marcus. It's just sometimes they're mad, right? It's not the masterpiece they thought, and it's everybody. It's to each their own, right? But if you're going to commission, it should always be viewed as a gamble, because you just never know what you're going to get back from that.
No. Sometimes it's worse if you get to be too friendly with them, because then they figure, he won't care if it's another year.
Exactly.
Which is, I guess, probably true. But yes, definitely. You only certain people in the hobby with the right temperament should go for commissions. That's what I always felt about it. Like there's some guys. I remember, was it, Andy Robbins? I think Andy Robbins was one of the guys we were talking about commissions. He's like, no, I don't think this is for me.
Well, here, let's look at you. You mentioned Sienkiewicz earlier, so you've got a couple pieces actually you sent me.
Yes, on the wall. My hallway is a wall of St. Kelvins Electric. So for many, many years, also, this is like I have a penchant for like futile searches. So when I first started collecting, Kevin Eastman had bought all of the artwork from Bill, like lock, stock, and there were only two pieces that sort of escaped him. I can't remember. One of them was a trade paperback, I think, which Bill may have drawn later, and that's why Kevin didn't have it. And then one of them was like there was a graffiti, limited edition graffiti hardcover that was like a very mixed media piece with like a negative photo image on it. So it was a wraparound cover on like burlap. I mean, it was all crazy circuit boards and stuff hanging off it. But it didn't quite, I didn't know that cover, and it didn't strike the nostalgia for me because I didn't own that book at the time. And the same thing with the trade. So I just kept waiting and waiting. Eventually, Kevin sold a lot of his collection, and this piece was my favorite image because it was the first image I saw, because this is Amazing Heroes cover, Amazing Heroes 99.
Oh.
And I was looking for this. This is what we were talking about. Looking for this exact piece, and Albert knew that I wanted it, and so I think when Kevin sold it, a lot of it went to Albert, Mitch, and maybe Pete. It was like 3 different people. I can't remember who else was there. They were like basically sold in parts, and Albert pulled it out, and he I don't know if he texted to me or he must have emailed it to me because it was too long ago to be texting. And he was like, "Is this the piece you want?" I was like, "Oh my God!" And he really could have had his way with me. I mean, I can say this now because it's later, but he knew I liked it. He gave me a fair price. I just said yes, and then I immediately got it framed. So they're all the St. Kelvins Electric pieces are sort of framed the same way. I didn't put the third one up because it's not a published piece. It's like a prelim to another commission. But this is my favorite page from the actual series, and on one of 2 pieces I think that Kevin had left at the very, very end. He had this, and he had the white costume with the plane ticket in the back pocket, whatever. She's like walking away, and so then I was able to get this as well, which is, like I said, my favorite page from the actual story. Just great moment, sword coming out, and Bill was just also a guy who doesn't really seem to slow down, but firing on all cylinders. And I don't have anything else to say other than I love this piece. And I walk by it every day, and it's in a hallway with like no light can get to it from like any window or anything like that. There's one light overhead, an incandescent light that I very rarely turn on. You know what I mean? Like if there's light filtering through the hall during the day, you can walk by and see them all very very well. So yeah, that's
it's gorgeous. And Josh Flanders, who is a huge fan of framing himself. He works with a framer in Chicago, I think, and we did an interview with him a few months back. I mean, talks a lot about that. So he's a guy who knows a good frame. So
no, I'm a fan. I mean, it's tough though because you have to frame it to fit in your house. I have a bunch of stuff in frames from an old house that don't really. They're not up because they don't. I'd have to have them reframed. They don't really fit with the house that I'm in now. But this was actually framed by a good friend, Steve Wyatt, a comic book dealer who did a lot of framing for a while for people in the art collecting community.
Oh yeah,
he sells some art from time to time and reps some guys. Did a great job, and was able to get them all 3 pieces done the same way so they would fit in the hallway and be the same size and all those things. So
Steve has done a great deal of framing, I think, over the years for many collectors and a few artists too. And I saw this comment in the chat from Kazra. He said that Kelvin's Magic and Warlock sketch from '86 is one of his favorites and Kevin pieces. So
I can't even. That's a great piece, and thank you very much. I can't even remember. I definitely didn't get it in '86. I'm just trying to remember where that came from exactly. I don't remember. I think there was somebody who had a collection of sketches. They were selling them all with a whole pile of them. There were a lot of stuff from the 80s and early 90s, and I think I just picked that one out of there. But yes, I mean, great from the period, really precise with the pen and stuff, and I'm also lucky it's not faded because Bill did so many of these things in like felt tip or ballpoint. A lot of the artwork from back then, especially if it's been hanging up, is faded out. I have a page from Batman 400 that Bill did. I was trying to get his whole sequence for a while. I've since given up. But one of the pages, there's like stuff on it that's done in ballpoint. Like there's little lamp, like a hanging light in one of the panels that's like almost gone. And it's not like I had it framed up, you know what I mean? But I think the previous owner may have had it framed up.
Right,
But
right.
for
No,
me, it's just
I have a sketch from Bill that was done in a probably a felt tip, and it's almost gone, unfortunately. But it was of magic, so I loved it, and I was like, I'd still rather have it, and I'll keep it in a safe place and won't let it sit out. So hopefully it doesn't get any worse than it is. But
that's a tough thing. Conservation is such a big thing, especially with the old stuff. And
mm-hmm.
you know, the artists weren't thinking about materials. I think the worst culprit. I mean, I love him to death, but Kyle Baker, God, Kyle, use better material, please. No more rubber cement, man.
Oh man. But you know, hey, I want to swing and look at a couple pieces that I think are, you know, kind of. I mean, they were curious at first, but they're not curious now.
Yes. So I've always told my wife to send this to the Smithsonian if I die. This was a great. This is from 2003. Remember when I said my great art buying spree before buying a house? This was like I sold a giant pile of art. So I actually won this out of Heritage back in 2003. They had a sort of like, I don't remember the story being some kind of a find. They had found three full faucet covers, and two of them were auctioned. I think Jim Halpern kept the third one. But I don't know, there couldn't be a better, you know, CC Beck. It's a Beck Costanza. You know, it's a war cover. You know, it's Captain Marvel fighting Nazis. It's early Whiz. It's it's interesting. I would still probably love to own an interior page early on with Billy Batson on it.
Sure.
You know, maybe a transformation page, but it didn't have to be. But I mean, like, to me, this is kind of a historical thing. So yes, that's why I said, oh, this got to go. It belongs in a museum. That's what I'm trying to say.
It really does. And here's a couple other historical pieces here. I mean, well, this is, here, why don't we talk about this one? I mean, this wasn't the one I wanted to pick, but I accidentally.
Well, you know, Ditko, you know, this also, courtesy of my pal Dave Mandel, was very kind and helped me. I mean, he's got great Ditko collection, and let me have one. And I actually, as much as I love Spider-Man, his Spider-Man, I would love to own a Spider-Man page, particularly one with Mysterio on it. But I said before, reading comics reprints since I was a kid, there was a Doctor Strange book that was in like a library, like school library, that I would check out all the time. That was all reprints, you know, old stories and stuff. Glossy, soft cover. I don't even know what the book was. I just have a vague picture in my head, but I would check this book out over and over again. And so, you know, I love all the geometric shapes and what we do with the perspective with that like tunnel he's conjuring, and you know, and you know, so Doctor Strange, Dormammu, or Dormammu, depending on who you are, and the Ancient One, I seem like I couldn't really go wrong, you know, and it's got the giant cape too.
Yeah, no, I've yet to own anything by Ditko, but I just haven't seen the right piece, right? Any of the right pieces I can't afford these days, but one of these days I'll have something.
No, I was the same way. You just, like I said, timing and luck is, as my friend Jerry Duggan would say, timing and luck is a big part of any of this stuff. You know what I mean? If I wasn't doing this for so long, a lot of people talk about prices, but you know, prices took a long time to go up to where they are now, and they might keep going. But you know, and if you've been collecting for a long time, I do believe you probably got, you know, equity in your collection. It's just a matter of having to sit down and figure out what you can give up. At this point, for me, it's very difficult to give up anything because I sort of have it down like I don't buy anything unless I really like it, you know, or if it's a sketch and it doesn't matter, it wouldn't help me, you know, in the pursuit of you know, of other art. Oh, I see Jerry Duggan, killer of X-Men. Yes, he killed me in a comic too. Like him and Phil Noto killed me in a comic. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's a good friend of mine. He also lives around here, so, and a big art fan as well. So.
Here, this was the one I meant to click on, but
yes. So this is the culmination of that like unreasonable love of Bob Kane Batman. So this page, there's a dealer years ago named Alexander Acevedo, was set up at San Diego Comic-Con, and he mainly had painted art. So we have a lot of Simon Bisley, a lot of Frazetta, and at some point he got out of comic art, and the art sort of got scattered. And while that was happening, this page showed up on eBay. And I bid it up as far as I could bid it up. Didn't meet reserve. You know, I contacted him afterwards. No word. disappeared into the ether. 10 years, almost to the day later, and I found other pages. Joe and Nadia Marino had an early page from, I think, Batman 13, the Joker on it that I hemmed and hawed and thought about, but in my mind, I just had this in my head. So this showed up in Comic Link the week before I turned 40. So it showed up. Yeah, so it was on eBay in 1999. It showed up in August of 2009, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And then, like, basically rounded up every favor I could think of. Jim Reed actually helped me out. I was like, they were just like, just win it, just win it, you know. So, and it went for 10x whatever my bid was in eBay. I think before, at least 10. Yeah, it was a lot. But I loved it. And but while I was researching it, because Comic Link, it was like 2-week auction or whatever.
Yeah.
I was able to get Joe Manarino, who was good friends with Jerry Robinson, to send Jerry a scan of it. They'd just seen each other at a wedding or something like that, and ask him about it. And he was the one who gave the credits. And I have the email still, like, in the back of the Mylar. But Jerry said it was Bob Kane pencils. He inked it, and George Russos did the backgrounds. So I got it straight from a guy who worked on the page. So, and to me, like, if you look at that panel of him punching the Joker, that this crash, that, like, how stiff he is there, and then the first one where he's punching them, it's like, that's Bob Kane. So very, very stiff. But, like, it's Batman fighting the Joker. I mean, he's not in the Joker costume, but, like, I just love it as an idea, and it's the last page of a story, which is also kind of neat. So
heck yeah.
You could see some white out there. It looks like Batman was smoking, or Bruce Wayne had a pipe or something that they whited out there.
No, well, great piece of history here. I mean, and you got that great story too. It's nice that Joe was able to get those details out from it too.
And
right?
Albert actually recognized it too. He said it had been in Sotheby's years ago, and actually dug up the Sotheby's catalog from, like, the early '90s. Somebody got me a copy of it, so I actually have a catalog where it's sold, like, a decade before the first time I missed out on it. So, but yeah, no, a prized possession. You got to figure out how to frame, or this one's not this big. I got to try and figure it out. I had this crazy idea that maybe Wyatt or someone could mat it where the mat was in a vague shape of, like, the bat symbol, the bat, like just at the edges of it. That was my sort of idea, because I think it's tough to frame interior pages. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't really look like anything when you step back too far. So
right. No, I agree with you on there. What's the size of this?
Oh, it's big. It's like 16 by 20s, 14 by 20,
wow.
Something like that. Yeah, it's big.
Very impressive. Let's see. Here was one other more,
Oh yeah. So this is
Older
my trek for trying to find a Cole Plastic Man. Is as close as I could get. Is Alex Kopsky, ghosting for him, and you've got a couple good panels of him. Stretching. I particularly like the can, the bucket in the last panel. But this actually came out of Ethan Roberts' collection, who unfortunately passed away. And when he passed away and his collection went up, I didn't know he had this page, but I guess it had been in an exhibit or something like that, and someone had alerted me to it. So when it was in Harrods, I was just like, still looking for the Jack Cole.
Jim Reed in the background saying, "Just go for it, Kelvin."
Probably. Well, Jim loves Golden Age artwork too, so he probably would have bought it if I hadn't bought it. So he's one of our elder statesmen in collecting. He that's the stuff he was. A lot of the stuff was closer to when he was reading on the stands than for me, certainly. So.
Well, here's and we know we're almost at our moment in time where we're going to have to end this thing. But
yes, okay. So this
one, look at that. How amazing.
So this is one of the other examples of I was trying to get one page. I don't recommend this strategy to anybody who's listening for collecting artwork. So from when I started collecting in 92 or 93 on, I always wanted the Watchmen page. Wanted a Watchmen page, a Killing Joke page, a Dark Knight page, all those things everyone wanted. But like an idiot, I was like, at the time, Watchmen pages weren't that plentiful. They're here and there, but for some reason, even though there were so many of them, there weren't a lot of them circulating. And Albert would have a couple here and there. They were like okay, never quite what I wanted. So I went through the book and said, I want this page. This is the only one I have. So I passed up every page that I saw until this came up. And searching everywhere. I remember the Donnellys had like a printed catalog. Someone got me some old like Xerox catalog, and this is issue 11, page 24. So I was like looking everywhere, and back then, of course, no internet. All we had was like those Gerber books and stuff like that. Trying to figure out whether someone had actually had the page and it said issue 1124, and without a scanner or a fax or whatever, it was impossible. You didn't know, was it the story lettering or the numbering matched up or whatever. And so I thought that the Donnellys had it at some point, and they didn't, as it turned out. So this page showed up on New Year's Day of the millennium. It was like 2000, year 2000, January 1st. This shows up on eBay. And it was the same thing, like, oh my God, pull out all this. Dave Mandel's like leaning over me, going, "Bye," And actually, very, very lucky. Like all these unlikely people, if you think about it now, Albert, Ken Danker, all these people that knew I've been searching for this page, just told me, "Hey, don't worry, I won't bid on it." It's like they were all sort of rooting for me to get the page after my ridiculous search. So, and as per usual, my friends helped out and stuff. So, and at the time, it was a record for the time, for what had been paid for a Watchmen page, which had broken a record from just like a few months before. I think like in October or November, the page where Dr. Manhattan rematerializes in the cafeteria, like it's floating in the air. That page had just sold for like, I don't know, it was like a whopping $2,500, which was like a record. And so I'll say it now because it's been 23 years. So I bought this page for $4,444 and some cents. I still have like the printouts from eBay and all this stuff. And it was some guy, just dormant collector. I'd never heard of him before, never heard of him from ever again. Not from the, I asked him, did you get this from the Donnellys? Like San Mateo Fine Art or whatever it was back then. And he said no. So that was a mystery.
Well, that's that is another lesson in we talk about in the hobby. It's always good to have a lot of good friends in the hobby that'll maybe take a step back when there's something that you really want, or will help you find something. Or it's you can never not have enough friends in art.
Well, this is a kind of hobby like a lot of my other hobbies. It's to be shared. Like it's not really like me sitting at home by myself looking at this stuff is not so great. I love like what we're doing now, right? We would do this even if we weren't taping it. You know what I mean? Sitting in a show, talking about it, flipping through a iPad, or back in the day, we'd actually have the art sitting in front of us on a table with drinks around it, and like perilously perched. No, Amanda always talks about we should have an annual like Comic-Con barbecue. We all bring our have a barbecue and put it out like So I definitely, I think, I made a lot of great friends in the hobby and all my collecting hobbies, so I think that's a really important part of it. People sometimes overlook what within the search for trophy hunting and the investment part of it. To me, it's really about, buy what you love, because you can't go wrong with that. I didn't buy any of this thinking that I'd be able to get out of it. I just bought whatever I could afford, and, and I get to have it for a little while, it'll go to somebody else eventually, so, as Jim Reed would say, it's just pieces of paper with ink on it. That's all it is.
Well, Jim again has one of the most, incredible collections, on the planet, but it is true at the end of the day, and you've just been you were collecting at a great time, early on, when even like you just said, $4,444 was an astronomical amount. That was back when Burn X-Men page might cost you $2,500, right? And or maybe even a little less.
No, like $750 or something.
Well, see, okay, when I started collecting, which was right around 99, they were around two.
No, maybe a little higher. I'm thinking when I remember in 1996, I missed out on a Burn X-Men page, and it was $750. And then when I finally bought one, I only ever owned one. It cost me a whopping $1,000, and that was like nobody else wanted it. I was like, "Am I the only one who wants this thing?" You know what I mean? Like no one else wanted to pay the $1,000. Like the seller had gone through a lot of people, so I was like the last guy on that list, and I was like, I still have it. So, no, I mean, like I think it's so expensive. Like you get enough friends, and I feel like I had this joke with any of my friends. Like if you want to borrow something for a while and just hang it up and look at it, we could just swap. I had this crazy, yeah. I proposed this to a friend of mine, Chuck Costas, and he thought I was nuts. And I'm like, but I just scanned all your Mike Zeck art. It's been in my flat file for 6 months. I've had it for 6 months. It's like, what difference does it make? You know what I mean? Because I was returning it all. I'm like, can I hold on to one for a little while longer? And he was like, he's like, what? And I'm like, you could borrow something of mine. You know what I mean? Like, like whatever. So I think that more people should invest in this idea of like, just like we'll just trade for a little while.
Right. You're like a library, or you're just kind of lending it.
Right. Like swingers. Like we'll be like swingers, except for instead of with spouses, it's a partners, it's art. How about that?
It's the art.
Comic art swingers. Yes.
The thing, but you have to, that the art collectors, in some cases value that artwork a little bit more than their spouse in some cases.
Right.
I'm only saying in some cases, not in mine. I can't say there's a piece of art I value more than my wife, but we do. I mean, it's definitely a love affair that we have with the artwork. I mean, I think many of us have that. I mean, it gets in your blood, and you can't, and it's really what it is. I mean, we love it so much that it's like Gollum with the One Ring, right? At the end of the day,
it's definitely true.
I bought a very expensive piece of art at the last Comic Art Live in May, and I when I bought it, I told my wife, I'm gonna go through my portfolios. I'm gonna find something I have to sell. Just something, even if it's. She's like, okay, just find something half the value of that one piece. I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't find one piece I want to let go of, and it was kind of frustrating because I thought for sure I could let something go, and I've only did it once, so as an exercise, I haven't gone back a second time and looked at everything. But it was really shocking to me that I felt like I couldn't let go of any of these pieces that I've picked up. That say over the last 5 or 10 years that were really important to me. When I thought for sure I could.
I got one quick question for you. This is an interesting one. Anybody out there, have you ever bought a piece of artwork, and when you got it, it just completely destroyed any need or want to buy another piece for like a year? Did you ever get something where you got it where maybe a year, 6 months? Have you ever bought anything where it just completely calmed that impulse for 6 months where you didn't even think about buying another piece of art?
No, not for me. I mean, the last purchase did, but then I ended up I bought like 3 pieces since then. So I guess maybe I've sort of held off a little bit because I was on maybe I might have picked up 2 or 3 pieces a month. But since that one purchase, I've only done, say, 1 purchase a month. But I thought for sure that I would need to stop. But no, not for me. But I mean, I'm curious about, okay, Chuck Arnold, and so we're getting, Troy Pierce says, yes, more than a year. So he was able to abstain after finding one piece. Chuck Arnold absolutely said no.
It only happened to me one time. That's why I'm asking. Yeah. It only happened to me once. I was completely baffled by it. I was just like, and so I wanted to see if anybody else had that experience. So
I can see it, but I don't know. It's too hard. I mean, the thing is, there's so much art out there, and there's, I'm sure even for you to this day, there's probably a few artists who you don't have that one example from, right? And
no, absolutely. But it was a weird thing where I was in a trance for like 9 months or something, where I was just like floating along, not really thinking about anything about collecting any art. It was weird. I don't have any explanation for it. I was just curious whether maybe it was some kind of pre-COVID that I got back in 2014. I don't know, or what if anyone else had that. But at least there's one guy. One guy said a year, so that's pretty good, right?
Do you mind saying which piece, or would you?
Oh yeah, no, not at all. It's the Gil Elfgren pinup painting that's in my gallery. It's not comic art, It's
right.
It was something I've been trying to find. Yeah,
I would love to own an Elfgren, and you're right. That might something like that, as special as that. I think I might take a break, because I've always wanted an Elfgren. I mean, if you're a fan of pinup art, and like you said early on in the conversation, that's that had to have been a super important piece for you to pick up.
Maybe it's something that the therapists in the future could take note of, to advice. Well, I mean, I actually had an Elfgren before that, not a painting. I had a prelim before that was sort of the placeholder. And actually, of all things, Dave Stevens helped me get it. He hooked me up with his friend Kent Melton, the sculptor. He was moving out of LA and was selling a bunch of stuff, and he brought me over there and said, "You like Elfgren? How about this?" And I'm like, "Okay," you know what I mean? That was that. But like this is like a full blown, And then one of those things you never think you're going to get, because every time you look, the prices jumped ahead.
Oh yeah.
Ahead, so.
No, they've always Elvgren stuff has always been out of my reach, but I love looking at it. I mean, because they've sold quite a few on Heritage. I mean, they're just
No, I was
beautiful.
following. Before I got it, I was really following that stuff very all the market very closely. But it hypnotized me. I guess that's the only thing I can think of. Hypnotism is the only thing I can think of. And it's a hypnotic piece, but it cured me for 6 months, 9 months, something.
Wow. Yeah, there's someone could do some research on you on that one just to try to figure out what it was. But last question, and obviously, I'm sure there's no video out there, but Whitley wanted to know if you have a video somewhere showing your collection and how you display the pieces in your house. I can tell you, Whitley, that the CAF gallery for Kelvin is linked in the show description, so you can see a lot of the pieces in Kelvin's collection. But do you actually have any photos? Because not a lot of people, several collectors on CAF will post photographs of how they display the artwork in their home. Do you have any photos like that in your CAF?
No, I'm afraid not. I mean, everything's sort of haphazard here, and I mean, I could take some photos, but I'm afraid I don't have anything right now. It's one of those things where it's a work in progress. I always want to have more work displayed, and there's always other priorities. And also, it's like when you look at how much it costs to frame things, you're like, I could frame these 3 pieces, or I could buy this other one. You know what I mean? So
right. I know what you mean. I haven't framed a piece of art in over 15 years, and and early on I loved it. I loved doing it. I framed probably almost 24 pieces. But what I found, I bought good glass and good frames, and a lot of them were at the, say 11 by 17s. So I've swapped out a lot of those pieces for different pieces over the years. So at least I got some good frames to do that, but I haven't framed a piece in a long time. But I probably should change that. But you know what? We are at the 2-hour mark, Kelvin, and I know.
Yeah, I'm afraid I've got a
jet. So listen, this was a lot of fun. It really was, Kelvin. Long overdue. We didn't get to look at all the pieces that you sent me, but maybe there'll be a part 2 to this interview somewhere.
Yeah. Some other. I'd love to do it. It was great fun, Bill, talking with you, and you know what I mean. It's a shame that we have to do it this way. We can't do it in person, but
exactly.
But I thought I had a lot of fun. So this is great, and thanks for everybody who tuned in and listened to me babble on. But I had a lot of fun.
When you're ready to start working on that new project, tell me about it, and we'll find out ways that we can work together to promote it. I'd love to help. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We got to sign off right now, but you'll see me again tomorrow night on the Dueling Dealers with Mike and Anthony. Thanks again, Kelvin.